1 million followers, I whispered to Freddie across the coffee shop table, watching his eyes widen as he nearly choked on his latte. And they still think I'm wasting my time. My name is Zoe, and I'm what you'd call the family disappointment. At least that's how my siblings make me feel every chance they get. While they climb their fancy corporate ladders, I've been building something of my own, something they'd never understand. Are you serious? Freddie leaned forward, lowering his voice. 1 million? That's insane, Zoe. Yeah, and the best part? Marley and Nash still think I'm just posting pretty pictures of street food and sunsets. I couldn't help but smile, even though it hurt. You should have heard them at dinner last night. The memory was still fresh. Another painful family dinner where I was served a hefty portion of criticism alongside Mom's lasagna. So Zoe, Marley had started, using that condescending lawyer tone she'd perfected, still playing around with that little travel blog of yours? I pushed my food around my plate. It's going well, actually. I just got back from Thailand and— Thailand? Nash interrupted, adjusting his expensive tie. Please tell me you're not burning through your savings for these little adventures. I'm not burning through anything, I said quietly, knowing they wouldn't believe the truth anyway. The blog pays for itself. Honey, Marley reached across the table, patting my hand like I was a child. I know you want to follow your dreams, but maybe it's time to think about a real career. I could get you an interview at my firm. Filing clerk positions are perfect for someone with your experience. Back in the coffee shop, Freddie's voice pulled me from the memory. Why don't you just tell them? Show them your analytics, your sponsorship deals. I took a sip of my Americano. Would you believe me if I told you I've tried? Last month, I mentioned a hotel partnership in Barcelona. Nash laughed and asked if they were paying me in continental breakfast vouchers. Your siblings are jerks, Freddie declared, not for the first time. The worst part is, they think they're helping, protecting me from ending up like Aunt Lexi. The artist aunt they never talk about? Yeah, she chased her dreams of becoming a painter. Now she lives in a tiny apartment in Portland, selling watercolors on Etsy. They use her as a cautionary tale. My phone buzzed. Another notification from my blog. A luxury resort in the Maldives wanted to collaborate. The irony wasn't lost on me. I made more in a month than Nash did in his quarterly bonuses. I hesitated playing with my coffee cup. I wish they could see me, really see me. Freddie's eyes lit up with that dangerous spark that usually preceded his best or worst ideas. So, make them see you. What do you mean? You've got the means, right? Do something big, something they can't ignore. I pulled out my laptop, opening my travel planning folder. Actually, I've been thinking about something. They've always talked about wanting to do this fancy European vacation together, the kind with private tours and 5-star hotels. Okay, Freddie leaned in. What if I funded it, the whole thing? First-class flights, luxury suites, the works. They'd never know it came from my little blog. The plan had been forming in my mind for weeks, but saying it out loud made it feel real. That's either brilliant or terrible, Freddie said. Maybe both. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Marley. Family dinner tonight. Mom's making pot roast. Please wear something professional for once. I showed Freddie the text. See what I mean? They treat me like I'm 16. So what are you gonna do? I closed my laptop with a decisive click. I'm going to plan the most amazing family vacation they've ever dreamed of. And then, I smiled, feeling a mix of excitement and guilt. I'm going to turn it into the most viral blog series they'll never see coming. You're going to document the whole thing? Every perfect curated moment. They want to treat me like a joke? Fine. But they're about to become part of a story they didn't know they were starring in. Freddie whistled low. This could backfire spectacularly. You know that, right? Probably. I admitted, standing up and gathering my things. But I'm tired of being the family cautionary tale. Sometimes you have to risk everything to gain anything. As I headed to my car to prepare for another family dinner, my phone lit up with more notifications. Another sponsored post hit 100,000 likes. A travel magazine wanted an interview. A tourism board offered an all-expenses-paid trip to New Zealand. And my siblings thought I was just playing around with a little blog. Tonight, I'd sit through their well-meaning criticism one more time. But soon, very soon, they'd learn what their little sister was really capable of. The question was, would it bring us closer together or tear us apart completely? You want to do what? Freddie's voice crackled through my phone speaker as I paced my apartment, surrounded by travel brochures and sticky notes. Book the whole thing. Tonight, I clicked through luxury hotel websites, my cursor hovering over the Reserve Now button. Before I lose my nerve. And you're sure about this? The memory of last night's family dinner was still fresh. Another masterclass in subtle undermining from my siblings. Pass the salt, Zoe, Nash had said, then added with a smirk, unless you're too busy photographing your mashed potatoes for your followers. Actually, I'd replied, forcing a smile, I was thinking about planning a family trip. That got their attention. Marley had lowered her wine glass, exchanging a look with Nash. A trip? She'd asked carefully, like she was talking to a child suggesting we all fly to the moon. Honey, those kinds of vacations are expensive. Maybe start smaller, like a weekend at the lake? I'm thinking bigger, I'd said, heart pounding. 2 weeks in Europe, first class everything. Nash had nearly choked on his pot roast. And how exactly are you planning to fund this little adventure? Blog exposure? I'll handle everything, I'd said firmly. All expenses. Consider it my treat. The silence that followed was deafening until Marley broke it with a patronizing laugh. Oh, sweetie, that's ambitious. But maybe we should wait until you have a more stable income stream. Now, staring at my laptop screen, I pulled up my bank account. The numbers made me smile. 6 figures from sponsored content alone, not counting my passive income streams. Freddie, I've never been more sure of anything. Okay, talk me through the plan again. I clicked through my meticulously organized spreadsheet. 2 weeks, hitting all their dream destinations: Paris, Rome, Barcelona, 5-star hotels, private tours, Michelin star restaurants, the works. And they have no idea you can afford this? Remember last month when Nash was bragging about his bonus? It wouldn't cover 2 nights at the hotels I'm booking. My phone pinged with a new email, another brand wanting to collaborate. I ignored it, focusing on the bookings. There, I said, hitting the final confirmation button. First-class flights booked. No turning back now. When are you going to tell them? Family brunch tomorrow. I closed my laptop, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. I already texted Mom to make sure everyone's coming. The next morning, I walked into our favorite brunch spot, clutching an envelope filled with printed itineraries. Marley and Nash were already there, both in their Sunday best, while I wore my usual jeans and a comfortable sweater. Well, look who finally made it, Marley said, checking her watch. We were starting to worry you'd gotten lost documenting the local coffee scene. I slid into my seat, waiting until after we'd ordered to pull out the envelope. Remember what I mentioned at dinner? Your imaginary European vacation? Nash chuckled. How could we forget? I spread the documents across the table. Not imaginary anymore. Everything's booked. We leave in 3 weeks. The silence was delicious. Marley picked up a flight confirmation, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling slightly. These are first-class tickets. 4 Seasons Paris, Nash muttered, flipping through the hotel reservations. Private tour of the Vatican, yacht day in Barcelona. His face went pale. Zoe, this is easily a 6-figure trip. I know, I said calmly, sipping my mimosa. Like I said, my treat. But how? Marley started. Does it matter? I interrupted, surprising myself with my confidence. You both work so hard. You deserve something special. Let someone else take care of things for once. They exchanged worried looks. I could see the wheels turning, wondering if I'd gotten into debt, or worse. Look, Nash leaned forward. If you've done something reckless, the only thing you need to worry about is getting time off work, I said firmly. Everything else is handled. But, do you want to go or not? Another silence. Finally, Marley smiled. A genuine smile this time. Of course we want to go. It's just unexpected. Sometimes the best things are, I replied, thinking about my blog's first viral post, the one that changed everything. As we finished brunch, discussing passport renewals and packing lists, I felt a twinge of guilt about my hidden agenda. But then Nash made another crack about my cute little Instagram hobby, and the guilt evaporated. Later that night, I opened my blog's admin panel and started drafting the first post of what would become my most ambitious series yet, Family Dreams, an influencer's secret gift. You've started the countdown now, Freddie texted. No going back. I looked at the family photo from brunch, already edited and ready to post. My siblings' smiling faces, completely unaware they were about to become the stars of a story that would change everything. Good, I typed back. It's about time they saw what their little sister can do. Oh my God, this is first class? Marley squealed, settling into her pod seat. I've never seen legroom like this. I hid my smile behind my camera, pretending to adjust settings while capturing her childlike excitement. If only she knew how many times I'd flown this way for blog work. Nash was already reclining his seat, accepting a glass of champagne from the flight attendant. This is insane, Zoe. I still can't believe you pulled this off. Just wait until you see the hotels, I replied, snapping another candid shot of him sipping champagne. Perfect for the blog post I'd already titled, From Skeptics to Believers, A Family's First Taste of Luxury Travel. As we took off, I couldn't help but notice how different they both were away from their usual environments. No power suits, no briefcases, no condescending comments about my career choices. Just pure, unfiltered joy. Look at these amenities. Marley was going through her travel kit like a kid at Christmas. Is this real La Mer cream? Only the best for my favorite siblings, I said, the words tasting bittersweet. Halfway through the flight, Nash leaned across the aisle. Seriously, Zoe, how did you afford all this? Magic, I winked, pulling out my laptop. Now smile for the camera. The lighting's perfect. Always with the photos. He rolled his eyes, but posed anyway. At least let me see them before you post them on your little blog. I nodded, knowing these shots would stay private until the perfect moment. My real followers would have to wait for the big reveal. 8 hours later, we landed in Paris. The look on their faces when our private driver held up a sign with our names was priceless. A Mercedes? Marley whispered as we approached the sleek black vehicle. Zoe, this is too much. Nothing's too much for family, I replied, discreetly filming their reactions for my Instagram stories. The Four Seasons George V left them speechless. Marley actually gasped when we entered our suite, running from room to room like a teenager. There must be some mistake, Nash said, staring at the Eiffel Tower view. This suite is bigger than my apartment. No mistake. I set up my tripod by the window. Come on, family photo time before we unpack. You and that camera, Marley laughed, but she was already fixing her hair. At least you're documenting everything properly. If only she knew. That evening, over dinner at a rooftop restaurant, Marley scrolled through her phone. Oh my God, look at this travel blog I found. They stayed in this exact suite last month. The photos are amazing. My heart skipped a beat. Oh? Yeah, some influencer with a huge following. Their European guides are incredible. She showed me the screen, my own blog post staring back at me. We should follow their recommendations while we're here. Nash peered over her shoulder. Wow, they really know their stuff. Professional photos, insider tips. This is what travel blogging should look like, Zoe. Maybe you could learn something. I took a long sip of wine, suppressing both a laugh and a scream. Maybe I could. Later that night, after they'd gone to their rooms, I sat on my balcony updating my private Instagram story. Day 1, they're literally reading my blog for travel tips without realizing it's mine. Stay tuned, followers. This is just getting started. Freddie replied instantly. The irony is killing me. How are you keeping a straight face? Practice, I typed back. Years of practice. The next morning, we had a private tour of the Louvre before opening hours. Our guide, Sophie, was one of my regular collaborators. Zoe? She exclaimed when she saw me, then caught my subtle head shake. Oh, welcome to the Louvre. Shall we begin? As we walked through the empty halls, Sophie sharing her expertise, I noticed Marley and Nash actually listening to me for once when I added historical facts I'd learned from my previous visits. How do you know all this? Nash asked, genuinely impressed. Oh, just picked it up from my little blog research, I said casually, watching his face fall slightly as he remembered to be dismissive. By dinner, my siblings were transformed. Gone were the power-playing professionals, replaced by wide-eyed travelers soaking in every moment. This is incredible, Marley said over our third course. I've never felt so free. It's like being in a dream, Nash agreed, then looked at me curiously. You seem so comfortable with all this luxury, Zoe, like you've done it before. I shrugged, adjusting my camera settings. I guess I'm just good at adapting. As they chatted about tomorrow's plans, I uploaded the day's photos to my private folder, already writing captions in my head. Soon, very soon, they'd see themselves through my lens and finally understand exactly what their little sister was capable of. More wine? I offered, raising my glass. Here's to family surprises. They clinked glasses enthusiastically, completely unaware they were toasting to their own imminent revelation. Just a little to the left, Marley. Perfect. I adjusted my camera settings as my sister posed against the Roman Colosseum's ancient walls. Now look slightly up, like you're lost in thought. You're getting really good at this, she admitted, following my directions. These photos are actually starting to look professional. I bit back a response about my $500,000 camera being pretty professional already. Thanks, I've had some practice. My phone buzzed. Another email from Travel and Leisure magazine about my viral Rome series from last year. I quickly dismissed it. Nash, you're up, I called to my brother, who was busy texting his office. The lighting's perfect right now. He groaned but complied, walking over. More photos? Don't you have enough for your blog already? Trust me, I smiled, positioning him just right. These will be worth it. As I snapped away, a group of tourists nearby started whispering and pointing. I knew that look. They'd recognized me from my blog. Thankfully, Marley and Nash were too absorbed in checking their own photos to notice. Miss, one of the tourists approached hesitantly. Are you the one who wrote the Hidden Gems of Rome series? I quickly shook my head, making a subtle, please don't gesture. Oh no, sorry, just another tourist. The fan looked confused but caught my drift and walked away. Nash looked up from his phone. What was that about? Nothing. Probably thought I was someone else. I quickly changed the subject. Who's hungry? I know this amazing little place down a hidden alley. The restaurant, like everything else on our trip, was carefully chosen from my previous visits. As we settled into our corner table, the owner rushed over. Signorina Zoe, welcome back. He caught himself too late. Back? Marley raised an eyebrow. Oh, I meant welcome, he stammered, looking at me apologetically. Special table for you and family, yes? I nodded gratefully as he hurried away, but the damage was done. That was weird, Nash mused. Have you been here before? Must be thinking of someone else, I said quickly, opening the menu. Try the truffle pasta. It's supposedly amazing. Later that afternoon, as we lounged by our hotel's rooftop pool, my phone lit up with a message from the editor of Wanderlust magazine. Love the mysterious family vacation posts you're teasing. When can we expect the full story? Still working on it, I typed back, glancing at my siblings enjoying their cocktails. Zoe, come look at this, Marley called out, holding up her phone. Remember that travel blog I found in Paris? They have a whole guide about this exact hotel. The photos are incredible. I walked over, trying to keep my expression neutral as I looked at my own images on her screen. See how they captured the sunset over the Vatican? She pointed excitedly. That's real talent. Maybe you could reach out to them for tips. Maybe, I said, watching the actual Vatican sunset paint the sky in front of us. Speaking of photos, let's get some shots before we lose this light. I positioned them perfectly, knowing exactly how to capture the golden hour glow I'd mastered months ago in this very spot. As I clicked away, Nash whistled. Wow, these actually look like those professional blog photos, he said, peering at my camera screen. Almost as good as that account Marley found. Funny coincidence, I muttered, adjusting my settings for another shot. That evening, after they'd gone to bed, I sat in my suite updating my private Instagram story. Day 5. They're literally comparing my photos to my photos. The irony is reaching new levels. Freddie replied immediately. This is getting good. When are you dropping the bomb? Soon, I wrote back. The magazine wants an exclusive. A notification popped up. Marley had just posted one of my photos on her Instagram. Her caption read, "Living the dream thanks to my amazing sister. Still don't know how she afforded this, but I'm not questioning it anymore." The post already had dozens of comments, including one that made my heart stop. OMG, isn't this the same hotel from that famous travel blogger's Rome series? I quickly logged into my main account and deleted the comment before Marley could see it. But more were coming. My followers were starting to connect the dots. Another message from Freddie. You can't keep this up forever. I know, I replied, looking at the growing stack of memory cards filled with perfectly curated moments. But I need a few more days. The story's not complete yet. I opened my laptop and began sorting through the day's photos, each one better than the last. My siblings looking carefree, happy, completely unaware they were starring in what would become my most viral series yet. A final text from Freddie. Just remember, you can't control how they'll react when they find out. I looked at my camera, then at the Vatican glowing in the distance. Maybe not, I whispered to myself, but I can control how the world sees it. Last breakfast in Europe, Marley sighed, stirring her cappuccino at our Barcelona hotel's rooftop restaurant. I can't believe it's almost over. I adjusted my camera one final time, capturing her wistful expression against the Mediterranean backdrop. The last shot for my series. Perfect. We should plan something special for Zoe when we get back, Nash said, surprising me. To thank her for all this. Absolutely, Marley agreed. Maybe dinner at that new place downtown? The waiting list is months long, but I can pull some strings. I almost laughed. I had a standing VIP reservation there from my restaurant review series last summer. That's sweet, but unnecessary, I said, checking my phone. Wanderlust magazine had just sent the final contract for my exclusive reveal. All I needed was to sign. No, really, Nash insisted. This trip has been eye-opening. We haven't always been supportive of your choices, but clearly you're doing better than we thought. Speaking of which, Marley leaned forward, Isn't it time you told us how you really managed all this? My phone buzzed again. A message from Freddie. They're starting to figure it out. Your latest Instagram story is blowing up. Let's just enjoy our last day, I deflected, standing up. We have that private yacht tour in an hour. On the boat, as we cruised along the coast, I felt the weight of my laptop in my bag. The blog post was ready. One click would change everything. Hey, Nash called from the bow. Come take our picture. I raised my camera, capturing them against the sparkling water. They looked so happy, so different from the judgmental siblings who'd mocked my little hobby for years. Perfect shot, I said, but my hand was trembling. Send it to us? Marley asked. I want to post it before we leave. Actually, I started, then stopped as my phone exploded with notifications. Someone had connected the dots. A viral tweet was circulating. Wait, isn't that famous travel blogger on vacation with her family? The same family she said never supported her career? This tea is about to be hot. Everything okay? Nash asked, noticing my expression. Fine, I said quickly, silencing my phone. But it was too late. Marley's phone dinged. She glanced at it, then did a double take. That's weird. Someone just tagged me in a post about some travel blogger's family vacation series. My heart stopped. Oh my God. She continued scrolling. They're saying, wait. She looked up at me, her eyes widening. Zoe? Nash grabbed her phone, reading quickly. This can't be right. It says you're... But that's the blog we've been following, the one with millions of followers. The yacht suddenly felt very small. I can explain, I started, but Marley cut me off. Explain what? That you've been lying to us? That you're actually some kind of famous influencer? I never lied, I defended. You just never bothered to actually look at my work. Nash was frantically searching on his phone now. Holy shit, it's all here, the sponsors, the magazine features, the brand deals. He looked up, face pale. You're making more than I do. A lot more, I admitted quietly. Marley stood up, hands shaking. So this whole trip, all these perfect moments, the photos, it was just content for your blog? No, well, yes, but we were just props to you? Nash's voice cracked. A story for your followers? You don't understand, I tried again. For years, you treated me like a joke, like my dreams were worthless. I wanted to show you. Show us what? Marley demanded. That you could manipulate us, use us for clicks. That I succeeded, I shouted, finally snapping. That while you were mocking my little blog, I was building something huge, something real. The silence that followed was broken only by the waves against the boat. The post goes live tonight, I said quietly. Wanderlust magazine has the exclusive Family Dreams, funded by Fantasy, how a travel blogger gave her skeptical siblings the trip of a lifetime. Take it down, Nash said immediately. I can't. The contracts are signed. Marley laughed bitterly. Contracts, of course. Everything's content for you, isn't it? Even your own family. She turned away, staring at the horizon. Nash just shook his head, walking to the other end of the boat. I sat alone in the middle, my camera heavy in my hands. The perfect lighting, the perfect backdrop, the perfect story. Suddenly, none of it felt perfect anymore. My phone buzzed again. Freddie. How'd they take it? I looked at my siblings, now strangers on opposite ends of the boat I'd booked to capture our perfect family moment. They hate me, I typed back. Was it worth it? I watched as Marley wiped away tears, as Nash deleted photos from his phone. The story would go viral. My following would explode. Brands would line up for collaborations. But as we sailed back to shore in silence, I wasn't sure I knew the answer anymore. The flight home was nothing like our excited departure. Marley switched seats to sit far away from me, and Nash kept his noise-canceling headphones on the entire time, pointedly ignoring my existence. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the article went live. The story was everywhere. Travel bloggers' epic revenge, treats dismissive siblings to luxury vacation. Viral, how one influencer proved her worth to doubtful family. The ultimate clapback, inside the most expensive I told you so ever. Turn it off, Nash snapped when he caught me looking at the headlines. Haven't you documented enough? I silently put my phone in airplane mode. But the damage was done. Our story was trending on every platform. Back home, I walked into my apartment to find Freddie waiting with takeout and a concerned expression. That bad, huh? Worse, I collapsed onto my couch. They won't even look at me. My phone rang. Another media request. Good Morning America this time. They want me to go on tomorrow, I said, staring at the email, to talk about turning family doubt into digital success. Are you going to do it? Before I could answer, my door burst open. Marley stormed in, still wearing her travel clothes, with Nash right behind her. You're trending on Twitter, she screamed, throwing her phone at me. Do you have any idea what this is doing to my reputation? My clients are calling. My boss saw it too, Nash added, his voice cold. Asked if I needed financial advice from my influencer sister. I never meant, I started. Never meant what? Marley cut me off. To humiliate us? To expose our private moments to millions of strangers? To make us look like villains in your little revenge story? You did that yourselves. I stood up, finally finding my voice. Every time you mocked my work, every time you treated me like a failure. So you set us up, Nash interrupted. Played us like we were just characters in your content. No, I wanted you to see. See what? Marley's voice cracked. That our little sister is a manipulative genius? Congratulations, we see it now. Freddie stepped between us. Maybe everyone should calm down. Stay out of this, Nash warned. You probably knew about it all along. Of course he knew, I said, because unlike you, he actually supported me. He saw what I was building while you were busy looking down on me. Building what? Marley laughed bitterly. A brand based on exploiting your family? My phone buzzed again. Another notification. Marley grabbed it before I could stop her. Join us tomorrow as viral sensation Zoe discusses her groundbreaking series about family redemption. She read aloud. Redemption? Is that what you're calling this? The media's spinning it their way, I tried to explain. I can decline the interview. Don't bother, Nash said. You've already gotten what you wanted. We look like fools, and you're the brilliant success story. That's not... You know what the worst part is? Marley's voice was quiet now. Those moments on the trip, when we were actually connecting, actually seeing you differently, they were real for us. But for you, they were just content. They were real for me, too, I protested, tears starting to fall. Everything I showed you, the hotels, the experiences, that's my real life, the life you never believed I could have. And now everyone knows how stupid we were not to believe in you, Nash said. Message received, loud and clear. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. Hope the likes were worth it, Zoe. Marley followed him, but stopped too. Mom's devastated, by the way. She can't believe her children have become a viral sensation for all the wrong reasons. The door slammed behind them, leaving me standing in my apartment, surrounded by the evidence of my success. Expensive camera equipment, luxury brand gifts, travel memorabilia from around the world. Freddie touched my shoulder gently. Maybe give them some time. Time for what? I wiped my eyes. To forgive me for proving them wrong? For having the career they said I'd never have? My laptop pinged, an email from my agent. The story had broken all previous engagement records. Brands were lining up for partnerships. My follower count was skyrocketing. Congratulations, Freddie said softly. You won. I stared at my screen, at the photos of my siblings looking happy and carefree. Photos I'd carefully crafted to tell my story of triumph. Then why does it feel like I lost everything? My phone lit up again. Good Morning America following up about tomorrow's interview. What are you going to do? Freddie asked. I looked at the last family photo we'd taken in Barcelona before everything fell apart. We were all smiling, genuine smiles, not knowing it was the last time we'd be happy together. I'm going to tell the truth, I said, picking up my phone. All of it, even the parts that don't make me look good. That could hurt your brand. Maybe, I agreed, starting to type my response. But I've already hurt something more important. We're live in 3, 2, 1. The producer pointed at me as the cameras started rolling. With us today is travel influencer Zoe, whose recent viral story about treating her skeptical siblings to a luxury European vacation has captured the internet's attention. The host began. Zoe, welcome. I shifted in my chair, ignoring the teleprompter with its suggested talking points about sweet revenge and proving the haters wrong. Thanks for having me, I said, then took a deep breath. But I need to set the record straight. The host's practiced smile flickered. This wasn't the script. I've read the headlines, I continued, about revenge and proving people wrong. But that's not the whole story. Tell us what really happened, she encouraged, recovering quickly. I hurt my family, I said simply. I took their private moments, their trust, and turned it into content. Yes, they doubted my career choice. Yes, they were dismissive. But what I did, I became exactly what they feared, someone who'd sacrifice anything for views. The host glanced nervously at her producers. This wasn't the uplifting success story they'd planned. But your blog, your success, it proved them wrong, didn't it? My success proved I could make money, but the way I handled it proved I could lose my soul doing it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably Freddie watching live, or my agent having a meltdown. So you regret the trip? The host pressed. I regret the manipulation, those moments of joy you see in the photos. They were real. My siblings were genuinely happy, genuinely connecting with me, and I ruined it by turning it into a public spectacle. The producer was making frantic cutting motions, but I kept going. To my followers watching this, success isn't worth destroying your relationships. And to my family, I looked directly into the camera. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. They cut to commercial break. The host immediately removed her microphone, leaving me alone on set as crew members awkwardly avoided eye contact. My phone was flooded with notifications. My agent had sent 15 texts in a row, the last one reading, "What are you doing? 3 brands already pulled their offers." I turned off my phone and walked out of the studio into the bright morning sun. Freddie was waiting in his car. That was, he started. Career suicide? I finished, buckling my seatbelt. Brave, he corrected. And true. We drove in silence until he suddenly turned down a familiar street. This isn't the way to my apartment. No, he agreed. It's the way to your mom's house. My heart stopped. Freddie, no. They're all there, he said quietly. Marley texted me during your interview. They watched it together. And they want to talk. Minutes later, I stood on my mother's porch, hand frozen before the doorbell. Before I could decide whether to run, the door opened. Mom stood there, eyes red but soft. Without a word, she pulled me into a hug. Inside, Marley and Nash sat at the kitchen table, an open laptop between them, showing a replay of my interview. Hi, I managed weakly. Nash spoke first. Did you mean it? What you said on TV? Every word. You tanked your brand for us, Marley said, not quite a question. Turns out my brand isn't worth my family. I sat down heavily at the table. I got so caught up in proving myself, I forgot who I was proving it to. We watched your whole blog series this morning, Nash said. All your old posts, too. You're actually really good, Marley added. Like, really good. We just never looked before, Nash finished, because it was easier to assume you were failing than admit we might be wrong. Mom set coffee cups in front of us, just like she used to when we needed to talk through problems as kids. I should have shown you my success differently, I said. Not as a weapon. And we should have supported you from the start. Marley reached across the table, taking my hand. God, Zoe, you've built something amazing. Those hotel partnerships, the brand deals. The writing, Nash added. Your Rome series made me cry. Don't tell anyone I said that. A laugh bubbled up, surprising all of us. Soon we were all laughing, the tension breaking like a fever. So what now? Mom asked, sitting down with us. What happens to your blog? I looked at my siblings, seeing them clearly for the first time in years. That depends. How do you feel about a follow-up series? The real story this time, about family, forgiveness, and finding success without losing yourself. Only if you let us read it first, Marley smiled. And maybe teach us some of those photography tricks, Nash added. Deal, I said, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. But first, I need to know, was the trip actually good before everything blew up? They exchanged looks, then Marley grinned. It was perfect, even better knowing our little sister made it happen. Through talent and hard work, Nash emphasized. Mom squeezed my shoulder. Now that's the story you should be telling. Ready? I adjusted the camera settings, checking the lighting one last time. As ready as we'll ever be, Nash said, straightening his tie while Marley touched up her lipstick. We were back in Mom's kitchen, where everything had fallen apart and come back together. The familiar wooden table was set for Sunday dinner, just like always, but this time, my professional camera equipment surrounded us. Remember, I said, just be natural. Tell your truth. Our truth, Marley corrected, squeezing my hand. I pressed record. So, tell me about the moment you realized your little sister was actually a successful travel blogger. Nash laughed. Oh, God. I was checking my stock portfolio in Barcelona when my boss texted asking if I needed financial advice from you. Talk about a wake-up call. For me, Marley added, it was earlier. Remember that restaurant in Rome? The owner knew you, and I finally started putting the pieces together. All those coincidences weren't coincidences at all. Mom appeared in frame with a steaming lasagna. I knew long before either of you. I'd been secretly following her blog for months. Mom! We all turned to stare at her. She shrugged, setting down the dish. What? You think I didn't Google my own daughter? I just figured she'd tell us when she was ready. Why didn't you say anything? I asked, momentarily forgetting I was supposed to be behind the camera. Sometimes mothers have to let their children fight their own battles, she said wisely, even when we see them making mistakes. Speaking of mistakes, Nash leaned forward, can we talk about how spectacularly I failed as a big brother? We both did, Marley agreed. We were so busy being successful in our own lanes, we couldn't see you building something incredible in yours. I swallowed hard, keeping the camera steady. And I was so busy proving you wrong, I forgot about proving myself right. The comments on your new blog post are insane. Nash pulled out his phone. Listen to this one. Finally, an influencer telling the real story about family, success, and redemption. No filters, just truth. The brands are coming back too, Marley added. Turns out authenticity sells better than revenge. Mom started serving the lasagna, the same recipe she'd made the night I first mentioned the European trip. You know what I love most about this new series? You're all working on it together. She was right. After my TV confession, something had shifted. Marley had offered her legal expertise for my contracts. Nash had started helping with my investment strategy, and I was teaching them both about social media, watching them discover a world they'd dismissed for so long. Okay, final question, I said, adjusting the frame to include all of us. What would you tell other families dealing with doubt and different definitions of success? Look closer, Nash said immediately. That thing you think is just your sister's hobby might be the next big thing. Support each other, Marley added. Success doesn't look the same for everyone. Mom smiled, passing the garlic bread. And remember that family is more important than followers. I set the camera to auto record and joined them at the table. You know, this isn't the ending I planned for my viral series. It's better, Marley said. It's real. Speaking of real, Nash pulled an envelope from his jacket. We have something for you. Inside was a printed itinerary. I recognized the format. It was from my favorite luxury hotel chain. What's this? We're taking you on vacation, Marley explained. All of us, no hidden agendas, no secret blog posts, just family. But I stared at the booking. This is expensive. Well, Nash grinned. Turns out when your sister is a famous influencer, you can get pretty good deals. Plus, Marley added, we've been saving up. Time to invest in what really matters. Mom raised her wine glass. To new beginnings? We clinked glasses, and I didn't even reach for my camera to capture the moment. Some things were better lived than documented. Oh, Nash suddenly remembered something. Tell her about the call you got this morning, Marley. My sister grinned. Netflix wants to option your story. They think it could make an interesting documentary about social media, family dynamics, and redemption. What did you tell them? I told them they'd have to talk to my sister's legal team. That's me, by the way. I'm your legal team now. And I'll handle the financial negotiations, Nash added. I looked around the table at my family, really looked at them. No camera lens, no filter, no agenda, just us, together, finally seeing each other clearly. So, Mom passed the salad. Where are we going on this family vacation? Actually, I smiled, I have some ideas about that. But this time, we'll plan it together. The camera kept rolling, capturing our laughter, our plans, our reconciliation. But the real story, the one that mattered most, was happening off-screen, around a simple kitchen table, over Mom's lasagna and endless possibilities.
My name's Emma, and I'm just your regular 30-year-old nurse. I fell for Alex, a university teacher with the kindest eyes you've ever seen. Now, his family? That's a whole other story. His dad, Robert, is a big shot in the antique world, and his house? It's like stepping into a museum, each room crammed with stuff older than my grandma. The first time I walked into that house, I swear every step echoed. Paintings stared down from the walls, but the one that really got your attention was the portrait of Alex's mom, Maria, hung up like she owned the place. It was clear from the get-go she didn't approve of me. She had this way of looking you up and down, making you feel an inch tall. "So you're the nurse," she said, her voice all cool and unwelcoming. "I suppose you do, well, with what you have." I tried to smile, but it was tough. Alex squeezed my hand, his way of saying, "Hang in there." Then there's Lila, Alex's sister, the family's little princess. She doesn't work, just flits around from one party to another, living off Daddy's money. Another day, another dollar. She'd laugh, flipping her hair. Well, not for me. I don't do dollars, I spend them. Robert usually kept out of the drama, buried in his books or cleaning some ancient vase. But even he couldn't hide the disappointment when he looked at Lila or the way Maria treated me. One day, we were all sitting in the living room, which felt more like sitting in a stuffy history lesson, with all the antiques glaring down at you. Maria was holding court as usual, talking about some auction or another. "Emma, darling, do try to keep up," she'd say, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness. "I know these things are probably beyond your pay grade. I bit my tongue, trying not to snap back. Alex was talking to his dad about some university stuff, trying to stay out of the firing line. And Lila? She was on her phone, probably texting her latest boyfriend or shopping online for things she'd never use. Ugh, Daddy, I need more money, she whined, tossing her phone down. Life is so expensive when you have taste. Robert sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose like he was trying to ward off a headache. Lila, we've talked about this. You need to start taking responsibility. Oh, lighten up. She shot back, rolling her eyes. It's not like we're poor. The tension in that room could have cut glass. I often wondered how Alex turned out so normal, growing up in a house like this. But then, he'd catch my eye and give me that little smile that said, "We're in this together," and somehow, I felt like we could take on the world. That's our life, teetering between normalcy and the madness of the House of Antiques. Every visit was a tightrope walk of polite smiles and biting tongues, but it was our life, and we were in it together. After what felt like the millionth awkward dinner at the in-laws, Alex's phone buzzed with a message that had him up and grabbing his coat like the house was on fire. It's Dad. Something's gone down with Lila, he muttered, his voice tight. I threw on my jacket, my heart hammering. Whatever it was, it sounded bad. The drive over was silent, both of us lost in our thoughts, the night pressing in around us. We got to the house, and the scene was chaos. Robert was pacing, his face like thunder, while Maria was on the couch, her makeup smeared from crying. And Lila? She was nowhere to be seen. What happened? Alex demanded, going straight to his dad. Robert looked up, his eyes red. Lila, she stole a piece from my collection. Tried to sell it to some local dealer. I gasped. Even for Lila, that was low. Why would she do that? I asked, more to myself than anyone else. Because she's spoiled and selfish. Maria snapped from the couch, her voice sharp with anger and something else, shame, maybe. Alex ran a hand through his hair, looking like he was trying to piece together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Is she here? Robert shook his head. No, she took off. But not before the buyer recognized the piece. An old friend of mine. So, what now? Alex's voice was flat, like he was bracing himself for the worst. Now, Robert said, his voice suddenly steel. Now we deal with it. She's brought the police to our doorstep. This is serious. The weight of his words hung in the air. This wasn't just family drama anymore, this was real, legal trouble. Maria stood up, her usual poise gone, replaced by a frantic energy. We have to protect her. She's our daughter. And what about the family's reputation? What about right and wrong? Robert countered, his voice rising. I felt like I was watching a tennis match, the argument bouncing back and forth with increasing intensity. But underneath it all, there was a sense of something breaking, something that couldn't be fixed with a few harsh words or a stern look. Alex stepped in, his voice calm but firm. Let's just figure out what to do next. Okay? We can't undo what's been done, but we can figure out how to move forward. Robert nodded, the fight draining out of him. He looked old, suddenly, the weight of his daughter's actions bowing his shoulders. We spent the rest of the night talking in low, tense voices, trying to come up with a plan. Lila had screwed up, big time, and now we were all caught in the fallout. It was late when we finally left, the house feeling more like a mausoleum than ever. The drive home was quiet again, but this time it was heavy, the air thick with unsaid things, and worries about what the morning would bring. I looked over at Alex, his profile lit by the passing street lights. You okay? I asked, my voice small in the car. He glanced at me, a tired smile flickering on his face. Yeah, I'm okay. We'll get through this. We always do. But as we drove back to our little slice of normal, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that Lila's fall from grace was going to drag us all down with her. And I was scared, not just for us, but for what it would mean for the family we'd tried so hard to fit into, even when it felt like they'd never really let us in at all. It was a regular evening, or as regular as it could be with the recent family drama, when Alex got another one of those calls. I could tell by the drop in his face it was bad. He hung up and looked at me. "Dad's kicked Lila out." "What? Why?" I was shocked. Robert had always been the type to keep the peace, no matter what. He wouldn't say over the phone. "We have to go over there now." The house felt different as we walked in, like a storm had passed through, leaving everything off kilter. Maria was in the corner of the room, her usual stern demeanor crumbled into something small and fragile. Robert sat like a statue, his eyes fixed on some invisible point in the distance. "What happened?" Alex's voice was steady, but I could hear the underlying tremor of concern. Robert looked up, his face carved from stone. "She did something unforgivable." The word hung heavy in the air, filling the room with a sense of dread. I felt my stomach twist. What on earth could Lila have done? Maria finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. She tried to hurt Robert. For the inheritance. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was one thing to be a bit of a brat, but this? This was monstrous. Alex looked like he'd been slapped. Hurt him? How? Robert shook his head. Doesn't matter how. What matters is she's no longer welcome here. Not after that. The conversation that followed was a blur of disbelief and anger. Alex and I left late, the house feeling more like a crime scene than a family home. As we drove home, the silence was suffocating. I wanted to say something, anything to break the tension, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, Alex spoke, his voice rough. "Can you believe it? My own sister, and Dad, I've never seen him like that." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "I'm here for you, you know that, right?" He squeezed back. "Yeah, I know. It's just, how did it get to this point? How did we not see it coming?" I didn't have an answer for him. How do you see something like that coming? How do you prepare for the moment when someone you grew up with, someone you thought you knew, crosses a line so far there's no coming back? We got home and tried to carry on as normal, but the shadow of Lila's actions hung over us. It was there in the quiet moments, the pauses in conversation, the way Alex's eyes would darken whenever his family was mentioned. The days passed, but the tension remained, a constant, unspoken presence in our lives. We were all waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the next disaster to strike. But for now, all we could do was wait and hope that somehow, someway, we could find a path back to something like normal. Or at least, learn to live with the new normal that Lila's actions had forced upon us. The days had started to blend together when out of nowhere, Alex's phone shattered the silence of our morning routine. The look on his face said it all before he even spoke a word. "My dad, he passed away last night," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Shock coursed through me. Robert, with his stoic presence and antique-filled house, gone just like that? It felt surreal as we rushed over to the family home, the place now a stark reminder of what had been. We entered the house to find Maria, not in tears or sorrow, but with a cold, almost relieved expression. Her usual stern face had an added layer of calculation as she received the condolences. As Alex tried to console her, she shrugged off his comfort with a briskness that took me aback. Well, it was bound to happen. He was getting on, and with all the stress lately. Her voice trailed off, not with grief, but an unsettling pragmatism. Throughout the day, as people came and went, offering their sympathies, Maria seemed more concerned with discussing the practicalities of inheritance than mourning her husband. "Without a will, it's pretty clear how things will be divided," she said, her voice sharp and businesslike. "The majority should rightfully come to me and Lila." The way she spoke about the future, her future, with such anticipation was chilling. There was no love lost here, no tender memories shared. Just cold, hard anticipation for what she stood to gain. Alex was quiet, his face a mask of disbelief and pain. Not just for the father he lost, but for the mother who seemed to shed her mourning like an unwanted coat. As evening fell and the house emptied, the reality of the situation set in. The lack of a will meant a legal tangle, one that Maria seemed almost eager to dive into. Her eyes had a gleam I hadn't noticed before, a sharpness that was almost predatory. "We'll have to speak to the lawyer first thing," she said, her voice brisk and efficient. "Make sure everything is in order." Alex nodded, his usual warmth buried deep under layers of grief and shock. "Yeah, we'll handle it," he replied, his voice steady but distant. We left the house under the cloak of night. The once grand home now felt hollow, filled with the echo of a life that was suddenly and starkly over. The car ride home was silent, a heavy stillness between us. I reached over, holding Alex's hand tightly, a silent message of support and love. He squeezed back, a small thank you in a world that had turned upside down. But as we drove, the city lights passing by in a blur, a deep unease settled over me. Maria's cold detachment, her almost eager anticipation of the inheritance, it was all wrong. And as the reality of Robert's death began to settle in, so too did the realization that this was far from over. The battle for the future, for the legacy and memory of a man who'd meant so much to us, was just beginning. And it was going to be anything but straightforward. "Emma, Dad mentioned a will not long before he passed. He made it clear I was the main heir," Alex confided in me one quiet evening, a serious look etching his face. "Without it, Mom and Lila stand to inherit most of the estate. We have to find it before they do." The urgency in his voice propelled us to the family home the next day. As we approached, the usual somber grandeur of the house was replaced by a sense of foreboding. We walked in to find a scene of chaos, rooms torn apart, furniture overturned, and papers scattered everywhere. Maria and Lila were in the thick of it, their faces set in grim determination as they rifled through Robert's belongings. The air was thick with desperation and the sharp tang of greed. "What on earth?" I gasped, stepping over a pile of books. Alex's jaw tightened. "They're looking for the will. They want to destroy it." Maria looked up, her eyes darting between us. "It's for the best. If that will surfaces, everything will go to Alex. It's not fair. We deserve our share too." Lila, who was rummaging through a desk, didn't even bother to look up. "Finders keepers," she muttered, her voice laced with venom. Alex moved forward, his voice rising. "This is Dad's legacy we're talking about. It's not just about money or property. It's about respecting his wishes." But Maria was unyielding, her gaze cold. "Respect? He left us to pick up the pieces. If there's a will that cuts us out, then it's better off gone." The search continued, more frantic now. Alex and I joined in, not to help them destroy it, but to save it from their clutches. We turned over every document, peered behind every portrait, and checked in every unlikely place, the tension between us and Maria and Lila palpable. As the day wore on, the house transformed from a mausoleum of antiques to a battlefield of wills. The once still air was now filled with the sound of shuffling papers and the occasional sharp word. Finally, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the windows, Alex paused, his exhaustion written all over his face. "We have to find it, Emma. It's what Dad wanted." I nodded, my hands dirty and my spirit weary. "We'll find it, Alex. We have to." We left the house that day with nothing to show for our efforts, but a growing sense of dread. Without the will, Maria and Lila would indeed inherit the majority of Robert's estate, and the thought of his last wishes being so callously disregarded was more than we could bear. The drive home was quiet, each of us lost in our thoughts, the weight of our failure heavy on our hearts. But the search was far from over. We knew that somewhere, hidden among the chaos and greed, was a piece of paper that held the key to honoring a man's last wishes. And we were determined to find it, no matter what it took. The days since the will's disappearance had been tough and tense. Then, one afternoon, a knock at the door broke the monotony. A courier handed Alex a parcel, his expression unreadable as he turned it over in his hands. "What is it?" I asked, watching the curiosity play out on his face. "It's from Dad," he said, his voice carrying a mix of hope and anxiety. He tore open the parcel to reveal a digital recorder. A message from his late father. We listened intently as Robert's voice filled the room, echoing from the little speaker. He spoke of his final wishes, his love for his family, and his hope for the future. The recording was heartfelt and clear, But as it ended, Alex's face fell into deep lines of concern. "This is it. This is Dad's will and his last words," he said. "But I know Mom and Lila, they won't give up easily. They'll deny everything or twist it to their advantage. We need something more compelling." I thought for a moment, an idea forming in my mind. What about my sister, the medium? What if we invite her to a memorial for your dad? She could conduct a seance, maybe bring Dad's spirit through. It might just shake Mom and Lila enough to slip up or confess. Alex looked at me, skepticism warring with desperation in his eyes. "Do you think that would work? Would she come?" I nodded confidently. "She'll come. And if anyone can bring Dad's presence back, it's her. It might make Mom and Lila think twice about crossing us if they believe Dad's watching." The decision was made. We'd arrange a somber gathering to honor Robert, a memorial of sorts. But with my sister's help, it would be more than just a remembrance. It would be a chance to bring the truth to light, to confront the greed and deception head-on. The evening of the memorial, the room was draped in a somber ambience, softened only by the dim glow of candles flickering in the corners. My sister, the medium, had an air of mystique about her, draped in flowing robes that added to her imposing presence. As she entered the room, a hush fell over the relatives, their eyes wide with a mix of skepticism and awe. "Thank you for gathering here," she began, her voice steady and commanding. "Tonight, we seek closure and truth from beyond." As the lights dimmed, leaving only the candlelight to dance across the faces of the assembled family, my sister instructed everyone to join hands. I felt Alex squeeze my hand tightly, a silent signal of mutual support. With a deep breath, my sister began to invoke the spirit of Robert. The room was heavy with anticipation, every creak and whisper amplified in the charged silence. Then, at the perfect moment, I discreetly turned on the recording Alex's father had sent us. Robert's voice, clear and unmistakable, filled the room, emanating from a hidden speaker. "My family," the recording began, "I speak to you beyond the grave to settle matters of my estate. There is indeed a will. In it, I have left the bulk of my property to my son, Alex. To my wife, Maria, I leave a modest monthly allowance." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Maria's face turned pale, her eyes wide with shock. Beside her, Lila's expression twisted into one of disbelief and anger. "And to my daughter, Lila, I leave nothing," the voice continued, stern and resolute. "Her actions, her attempt to poison me, have not only betrayed my trust but have significantly worsened my health." The accusation hung in the air like a thick fog, settling over the room with a weight that was almost tangible. Lila stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, her face a mask of rage and denial. "This is nonsense," she spat out, looking wildly around the room. "But know this," the voice of Robert continued, unfazed by the outburst, "the will is hidden within the house, in a place none would think to look." As the recording ended, the room erupted into chaos. Maria, tears streaming down her face, looked utterly defeated, her earlier composure shattered. Lila was shouting, her words a tangled mess of accusations and denials. The relatives were a mixture of shock and gossip, their eyes darting between the key players of this family drama. Alex stood, his face calm amid the storm. "We will find the will," he declared, his voice cutting through the noise. "And we will honor my father's wishes." The night ended with more questions than answers, the house abuzz with speculation and whispered theories. As the guests departed, leaving behind a trail of uneasy glances and hurried farewells, we were left to ponder the next steps. As we tidied up, the weight of the evening's revelations pressing down on us, Alex turned to me, his expression a mixture of gratitude and determination. "Thank you," he said simply, his hand finding mine. "It's what family does," I replied, squeezing his hand in return. After all that mess with the will and Lila trying to poison her dad, things around the house got real quiet, real quick. Lila took off into the night, scared stiff of the cops catching up with her for what she did. Can't say anyone was surprised. She was always a bit of a wild card, but this? This was something else. Maria, meanwhile, wasn't wasting any time feeling sorry for herself. Before anyone could blink, she started hauling out the fancy stuff from the house, piece by piece. Everything except her own giant picture hanging in the main room. It was like she was trying to grab what she could before the ship sank. But she didn't know what we found stashed behind her portrait. Alex and I were poking around when we found the will hidden back there, all official and legal-like, and some papers that pretty much proved what Lila did to her dad. You should have seen Alex's face when we found it. It was like Christmas came early. Reading the will, it was all there in black and white. Alex was getting the lion's share of everything. Maria was left with just a bit of cash to keep her going every month, and Lila? Well, she got a big fat nothing for her troubles. Maria packed up her bags and left the house, probably off to live a quieter life with her allowance. And Lila? Who knows where she ended up? Hiding out, probably, hoping the cops don't find her. So, there we were, me and Alex, left in this big old house. It felt weird, knowing everything that went down there. But we started fixing it up, making it feel more like ours. Less of a museum and more of a home, you know? One evening, as we were sitting down after a long day of cleaning and sorting, Alex looked at me and just said, "We did it, huh?" "Yeah," I replied, looking around at what was now our place. We did it. Together. It felt good, sitting there with him, knowing we'd been through the ringer and came out the other side. The house had its ghosts, sure, but it was ours now. And whatever the future held, we'd face it as a team. That's what family does, right? That's what we were now. A real team. My name's Sherry, and life's been kicking me hard these days. Just 6 months ago, I walked out of what was supposed to be my forever love story. Add to that, my grandma's losing herself to dementia, and it feels like the walls are closing in on me. I was at my job at the local library, trying to focus on reshelving books, but my mind was miles away with Grandma. That's when my best friend, Jess, walked in, her face all scrunched up with worry the way it does when she's about to give me a piece of her mind. "Sherry, you look like hell," Jess stated bluntly, her hands on her hips. "Thanks, Jess, you always know how to cheer me up," I replied, the sarcasm dripping from every word. "No, seriously, Sherry. This ain't healthy. You need help, someone professional to talk to," she insisted, her gaze softening. I knew she was right. The sleepless nights and constant anxiety were wearing me down. So, I sighed. "Maybe you're right. Do you know anyone?" She nodded eagerly. "Dr. Fisher. Heard he's good with cases like yours. I'll text you his details." I wasn't sure about spilling my guts to a stranger, but something had to give. The very next day, I found myself sitting in Dr. Fisher's office, a cozy room with soft light and too many diplomas on the wall. He was older, maybe in his late 40s, with a calm demeanor that made the room feel safer. "So, Sherry, tell me what's been troubling you," he began, his voice smooth and reassuring. "Where do I even start?" I thought. It's everything. I left my fiancé, my grandma's sick, and I just feel stuck, I managed to say, the words tumbling out. Dr. Fisher nodded, jotting down notes. "It sounds like you're carrying a heavy load. Let's unpack that together, shall we?" As the sessions went on, I found myself telling him things I hadn't even admitted to myself. He never judged, just listened and offered the occasional, or, "I see." It was like unclogging years of pent-up fear and sadness. One particular day, I left his office feeling lighter than I had in months. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow on the world. I actually smiled, feeling a flicker of hope. That night, at my small apartment, as I was heating up some canned soup, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Dr. Fisher, something about a follow-up appointment. I stared at the screen for a long moment. This guy was becoming my lifeline, and part of me hated that I needed him so much. The days turned into weeks, and before I knew it, 2 years had passed since I first stepped into Dr. Fisher's office. I started feeling like I could breathe again without a boulder pressing on my chest. I even managed to laugh genuinely at a joke Jess made. It was during one of these lighter moments that my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I picked it up anyway. "Hello, Sherry, it's Dr. Fisher," the voice on the other end said. I was taken aback. "Dr. Fisher? Is everything okay?" I asked, a hint of worry creeping into my voice. Yes, everything's fine. I was calling to discuss your progress and, perhaps extend an invitation," he said, a nervous chuckle following his words. "An invitation?" I echoed, curiosity piqued. "Yes, I thought, perhaps, we could meet for a coffee, outside the office. You've made tremendous progress, and I think it might be beneficial to see things from a new perspective," he suggested. I paused, chewing my lip. This was uncharted territory. "Isn't that, like, against some rule or something?" I finally asked. There was a brief silence. "Well, you're not my patient anymore. I thought it might be nice to catch up in a more relaxed setting," he replied. Something about the way he said it made me agree. "Okay, sure, coffee sounds nice," I said, trying to ignore the flutter in my stomach. We met at a local cafe the following Saturday. It was weird seeing him outside the office, in jeans and a casual shirt. He looked normal, almost like a different person. "You look well, Sherry," he said as he greeted me with a warm smile. "Thanks, Dr. Fisher. I feel better too," I replied, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. "Please, call me Robert. We're not in the office now," he said with a light laugh. I nodded, feeling a bit awkward. "Okay, Robert." The conversation flowed surprisingly easily. We talked about everything and nothing. He told me about his love for hiking and how he always wanted to visit the Grand Canyon. I shared my newfound love for painting, a hobby I took up as a form of therapy. As we sipped our coffee, he leaned in, his eyes serious, but kind. "Sherry, I've seen you grow and overcome so much. You're incredibly strong, you know that?" I blushed, unaccustomed to such direct praise. "Thanks, I guess I had a good therapist," I replied with a small smile. He chuckled. "Well, I can't take all the credit. You did the hard work." The cafe began to empty as we continued talking, oblivious to the time passing. It was only when the waiter came to clean up that we realized hours had flown by. "Guess we better head out," I said, feeling a twinge of disappointment. Robert stood up, offering a hand to help me up. "Sherry, I've enjoyed this more than I thought. Would you be interested in doing this again? Maybe dinner next time?" I hesitated, a mix of excitement and caution swirling inside me. But looking into his sincere eyes, I found myself nodding. "Yeah, dinner sounds great." The initial charm of our dinners and casual meetups quickly turned into a full-blown romance. Before I knew it, Robert and I were inseparable. He was attentive, caring, and always there to lend a hand, especially with Grandma's situation. I thought I'd hit the jackpot, that my life was finally taking a turn for the better. But after the wedding, the man I married started to change, or maybe his true colors began to show. It started subtly. He'd make comments about my friends, "You're better off without them," or "They don't really care about you." At first, I brushed it off as overprotectiveness, but then it got worse. He became possessive, needing to know where I was every minute of the day. His control seeped into every aspect of my life. He insisted I quit my job, saying he didn't want me to stress about work. "You don't need to work. I can provide everything. Trust me, Sherry," he'd say, his voice firm. But it wasn't about the money. It was about freedom, about having something that was just mine. Yet, I found myself nodding along, resigning from my job, and becoming entirely dependent on him. That was his plan all along. Then came the isolation. He'd check my phone, monitor my calls and texts. "Who are you talking to? Why are you laughing? Tell me," he'd demand, his eyes wild with an unsettling intensity. "It's just Jess, you know her," I'd stutter out, feeling like a child caught in a lie. He'd snort. Jess, huh? She's no good for you. I don't want you talking to her anymore. It was insane. I felt like I was losing my mind. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted him, my voice shaking but loud. I can't do this, Robert. I can't live like you're my warden. I need my life back. He just laughed, a cold, heartless sound that echoed through the house. Your life? Sherry, your life is with me now. And if you even think about leaving, what about your grandmother? Without me, she's back on the streets. Remember that. I was trapped. Every time I thought about standing up to him, about leaving, the image of my sweet, confused grandma being thrown out of the care facility would stop me dead in my tracks. I was caught in a web of his making, every move calculated to keep me under his thumb. Nights became my only solace, the only time I could cry without fear of reprimand. I'd lay in bed, the man I thought I loved snoring next to me, and wonder how I got here. How did the charming, caring man I married turn into this monster? I realized too late that the signs were there from the beginning. His need for control, his dismissal of my friends, his insistence on me quitting my job. I was blinded by the need for love, for someone to care. And now, I was paying the price. I had to do something, anything. I couldn't live like this, not really living at all. But every time I thought about acting, his threats against my grandmother would paralyze me. It was a vicious cycle of fear, control, and utter hopelessness. And I had no idea how to break free. After months of being under Robert's thumb, I felt like I was fading away, becoming a ghost in my own life. The vibrant, independent woman I once was had been replaced by a shadow, flinching at the sound of his voice, jumping at the slam of a door. The house felt like a prison, and Robert was the warden, his rules the chains binding me. One evening, as we sat in what was supposed to be our cozy living room, the tension was particularly thick. I was on edge, trying to appear small, invisible, but he was like a storm, brewing and ready to burst. Why don't you ever look at me when I talk to you? Robert snapped suddenly, his eyes narrow slits. I flinched. I'm sorry, I was just thinking about something. Always thinking, always in your head. You're here with me, remember that. I'm your husband. His voice rose with each word, the last almost a shout. I nodded, murmuring apologies, trying to placate the rising fury in him. But it was no use. He was in one of his moods, and there was no calming the storm. You know what? I've had enough of this attitude. You need to learn. His voice was cold, calculated. Before I could react, he grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. Robert, please, you're hurting me. I cried out, fear overtaking me. He dragged me to the small storage room, the one place I hated the most. It was dark, windowless, a tiny box of a room. Maybe some time in the dark will teach you to appreciate what you have, he hissed, pushing me inside. I stumbled, falling to the cold floor as he slammed the door shut, plunging the room into complete darkness. My heart raced, panic clawing at my throat. I've always been terrified of the dark, a fear I once shared with him, back when I thought he cared. Robert, please. Let me out. I'm scared of the dark, remember? I shouted, my voice cracking. His laughter was the last thing I heard before his footsteps faded away. There I was, alone in the dark, the weight of my situation crushing me. I curled up in a corner, my body shaking with sobs. Time passed, I don't know how long. It felt like an eternity. Every creak and whisper of the house made me jump, my imagination conjuring monsters in the shadows. But the real monster was just outside the door, the man I had married. Finally, the door creaked open, a sliver of light cutting through the darkness. Have we learned our lesson? Robert's voice dripped with mockery. I couldn't speak, couldn't look at him. I just nodded, anything to get out of that room. He pulled me up, his grip still tight but slightly less punishing. Good. Remember this feeling, Sherry. Remember who's in charge here. As I stumbled back to the living room, my legs weak and my eyes adjusting to the light, I felt a deep, burning shame. How had I let it come to this? How had I become someone so weak, so controlled? But beneath the shame and fear, a spark of something else flickered. Anger. I was angry at him for treating me this way, and angry at myself for allowing it. That dark room had been a wake-up call. I couldn't live like this, couldn't let him snuff out the last bit of me. Amidst the despair of my darkening world, a glimmer of unexpected hope emerged. I discovered I was pregnant. As I held the positive test, a wave of emotions overtook me, fear, uncertainty, but also a fierce protective love. I clung to the hope that this news might soften Robert, maybe even bring back a trace of the man I had fallen in love with. With a trembling heart, I approached him that evening. "Robert, I have something to tell you. We're going to have a baby." His reaction was immediate and terrifying. His face contorted not into joy, but into a furious scowl. "A baby? No. That's not going to happen, Sherry." I recoiled, the harshness of his words cutting through me. "But it's our child," I pleaded. "Maybe this can change things, make them better." He was unyielding, his voice icy as he spat out his next words. "No, Sherry. It's going to change nothing. You're going to get rid of it." I felt a surge of defiance against his cruel demand. "No, I won't do that. This child is part of me." In a rage, he grabbed my arm, his fingers pressing into my flesh painfully. "You don't understand, do you? You're mine, everything you have is mine. Your fears, your body, your future." I struggled, but he was too strong. "Robert, please, let me go." Instead of relenting, he dragged me to a small, locked room in the back of our house, a place he knew I avoided at all costs. The room was dark, damp, and crawling with spiders, my deepest, most paralyzing fear. With a shove, I was inside, the door slamming shut behind me. The sound of the lock clicking was like a death knell. My heart raced, and I could hear the skittering of spiders in the darkness. I was trapped, the small space closing in on me, the creeping terror of the spiders consuming me. "Let's see how long your maternal instincts last now," he taunted from the other side of the door. I screamed, pounded on the door, but it was useless. The hours stretched on in that dark, horrifying space. My mind raced with fear for myself and my unborn child. How could I bring a life into this nightmare? Eventually, the door opened. Robert's silhouette filled the doorway, a smirk on his face. "Well, have you thought it over? Will you get rid of the problem now?" Weak, terrified, but resolute, I whispered through my tears, "No." That defiance cost me dearly. He left me there longer, the spiders, my only company. The last thing I remember is falling to the floor and fainting. Waking up in the sterile white of the hospital room, I was momentarily disoriented, the beeping machines and four-line foreign intruders in my muddled consciousness. Memories flooded back, Robert, the spiders, the darkness, and a shudder rippled through me. But amidst the fear, a new sensation bubbled within me, the fierce, protective love for the tiny life growing inside me. I knew I had to act, not just for me, but for my unborn child. As soon as I was alone, I carefully pulled out the phone I had hidden away and dialed my cousin, Mark, who worked in the FBI. His voice was a lifeline as I whispered my situation, each word a mixture of fear and hope. "Mark, it's Sherry. I need help. It's Robert. He's..." My voice broke, the reality of it all threatening to overwhelm me. "Sherry, slow down. Tell me everything." Mark's voice was calm, steady. I recounted everything, each word lifting a bit of the weight off my shoulders. Mark's responses were terse, professional, but underneath I could hear the undercurrent of rage. "Sherry, listen to me. I'm going to help you. We're going to get you out of there, but you need to be strong a little longer. Can you do that?" he asked. I nodded into the phone, a silent promise to myself and my baby. "I can, Mark. I have to." "Good. I'm going to make some calls. We'll act fast." Just hang tight and don't do anything to arouse his suspicion, he instructed. I agreed, the plan forming a fragile lifeline in the chaos. The rest of my hospital stay was a blur of doctors and whispered phone calls, each moment stretching into eternity as I awaited my release. When the day finally came to return home, a heavy dread settled over me. The house that once promised love and safety now loomed like a monster, its walls surely echoing with the screams and tears of the past months. Robert was waiting, his presence filling the room like a dark cloud. I braced myself for the confrontation, the culmination of all the fear and resolve that had been building inside me. "Sherry," Robert began, his voice eerily calm. "You're back. How was the hospital?" I kept my voice steady, masking the storm of emotions within. "It was fine. I'm feeling better," I lied, meeting his gaze with a feigned calmness. He circled around me, like a shark sensing blood in the water. Good, because we need to talk about the situation." His eyes flicked down to my still flat stomach, a sneer curling his lips. I clenched my fists, feeling the baby stir within me. "There's nothing to talk about. I've made my decision." Robert's face twisted into a mask of fury. "Your decision? You think you have a choice here?" I swallowed hard, standing my ground. "Yes, I do. This is my body, my child. I won't let you control me anymore." His laugh was cold, devoid of any real humor. "Oh, Sherry, you never learn, do you? I always have control. Always. But this time was different. I had a plan, a lifeline. I just needed to bide my time, play along until I could make my escape." "I'm tired, Robert. I'm going to bed," I said, turning to leave the room. He grabbed my arm, his grip like iron. "You're not going anywhere until we settle this." That's when the front door burst open, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the house. Police officers streamed in, their badges glinting, their faces set in grim determination. "Robert Fisher, you're under arrest for the abuse and unlawful imprisonment of Sherry Fisher," one of the officers announced, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Robert's face went white, his grip on my arm loosening in shock. "This is ridiculous. She's my wife, she's lying." But I wasn't alone this time. Mark strode in behind the officers, his face a mask of brotherly fury. "No, Robert. You're the liar. We have everything. The recordings, the testimonies. It's over." Robert's eyes darted around, looking for an escape, but there was none. The officers handcuffed him, reading his rights as he continued to splutter denials and threats. As they led him away, his eyes met mine one last time, a mixture of disbelief and rage. But I didn't cower this time. I met his gaze squarely, the fear inside me replaced by a burning sense of justice. After the chaos had died down, Mark came over to me, his expression softening. "Sherry, are you okay?" I nodded, feeling the tears well up. "Yes, I think so. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for everything." He hugged me tightly, a protective brotherly embrace. "Always, Sherry. Always." The house felt eerily quiet after they left, the shadow of Robert's presence still lingering in the corners. But as I sat there, alone yet free, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The confrontation had been terrifying, but it was the first step towards a new life for me and my child. The world seemed brighter, the air fresher, as I stepped into my new life. The chains of fear and control were finally broken, leaving behind a path paved with hope and the promise of a new beginning. With Robert now facing the consequences of his actions, I could finally breathe, finally plan for the future I wanted for me and my baby. I moved back into my old apartment, the familiar walls a welcome embrace. It needed a bit of work, a touch of paint here, a new picture there, but it was mine. As I unpacked a box of old photos and trinkets, a knock came at the door. Opening it, I found Jess, her face breaking into a wide grin. "Sherry! Look at you, free and radiant as ever." I laughed, the sound light and genuine. "Jess, come in. I've missed you." We sat down, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, a pot of coffee between us. "So, what's the plan now?" Jess asked, her eyes shining with excitement. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her question. "First, I'm going back to work. I need to find my feet again, you know? And then I'll focus on being the best mom I can be." Jess reached over, squeezing my hand. "You're going to be amazing, Sherry. And hey, if you need anything, you know I'm here, right?" I nodded, the lump in my throat making it hard to speak. "I know, Jess. Thank you." As days turned into weeks, I found a rhythm to my new life. I returned to the library, the books and quiet a comforting presence. My co-workers welcomed me back with open arms, their support a constant reminder that I wasn't alone. The pregnancy progressed, each doctor's visit a mixture of nerves and excitement. And then, one cool autumn morning, my son was born. Holding him in my arms, everything else faded away. He was perfect, a tiny beacon of hope and love. The legal battles with Robert were tough, emotionally draining, but I stood firm, bolstered by the support of Mark, Jess, and my legal team. In the end, justice was served. Robert would spend years behind bars, his threats and control finally silenced. I received a settlement, a sum that secured a comfortable future for my son, my grandmother and me. But more than the money, it was the freedom it represented that mattered. I was no longer bound to a man who saw me as nothing more than an object to control. I was free. As my son grew, so did I. I learned to trust again, to laugh without reservation, to love without fear. I made new friends, reconnected with old ones, and found joy in the little things. One day, as I watched my son play in the park, a thought struck me. "We did it, little one. We're really doing it," I whispered, tears of happiness glimmering in my eyes. He looked up, his little face breaking into a smile, and for a moment, everything was perfect. Hi, I'm Sarah, a 30-year-old department head at a company where ambition is as common as a morning coffee. My world is a balancing act between being a mother to my bubbly 5-year-old, Lily, and navigating the corporate labyrinth. It wasn't always like this, though. I met my husband, Mark, at this very company. We were both fresh recruits then, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I remember our first meeting like it was yesterday. I was struggling with the copier, and Mark walked over with a smirk. "Need a hand with that?" he asked, his tone teasing. I rolled my eyes, but smiled. "I've got it, but thanks." That was the beginning of everything: work, love, marriage, and then Lily came along. I took maternity leave, relishing the time with her. When I returned to work, I found Mark had climbed up the ranks to a department head. One evening, at home, I was going through some work documents when Mark glanced over. "You're really going all in with this, huh?" he said, a slight edge to his voice. I looked up, a bit taken aback. "Well, yeah, I love my job, you know that." Mark shrugged, but his tone was laced with something I couldn't quite place. "Sure, but don't you think Lily needs you more right now?" I sighed, a familiar debate on the horizon. "Mark, we've been over this. Lily is doing great, and my mom helps out a lot. I can't just give up on my career." The conversation shifted to more mundane topics, but his words lingered in my mind. It wasn't the first time he'd hinted at his discomfort with my career aspirations. A year later, I too became a department head, a fact that seemed to unsettle Mark more than he let on. His once playful banter at home took on a sharper tone. One day, as I was prepping for a big presentation, Mark walked into the room, his expression hard to read. "So, you're presenting to the board today, huh?" I nodded, my focus on the notes in front of me. "Yeah, it's a big opportunity for me." Mark leaned against the doorframe, his voice tinged with sarcasm. "Just don't forget who you're coming home to. Don't let this job take over your life, Sarah." I stopped, looking up at him. "Mark, what's that supposed to mean?" He waved his hand dismissively. Nothing, just, be careful, that's all. But it was clear it meant more than nothing. Mark's attitude towards my career had shifted from supportive to something more resentful, something I never expected from the man I fell in love with. It was a Wednesday evening, the kind where the sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, creating a serene backdrop that sharply contrasted the growing tension indoors. We were seated at the dinner table, Lily's chatter about her day at school providing a brief respite from the unspoken conflict between Mark and me. "Mommy, look." Lily beamed, holding up a crayon drawing of a woman in a suit. "I drew you at work. You look like a superhero." I smiled, genuinely touched. "That's amazing, sweetie. Thank you." Mark looked at the drawing over Lily's shoulder, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "That's nice, Lily. But remember, the most important job for Mommy is here, with us." I felt my smile falter, a familiar irritation bubbling up. "Mark, I think it's important for Lily to know that her mom can have a career and be there for her family," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. He let out a sigh, setting down his fork. "I just think you're stretching yourself too thin, Sarah. Lily needs you." I was about to retort when the phone rang, cutting through the mounting tension. Mark answered, and I immediately recognized the shrill, insistent tone on the other end. It was his mother, Helen. "Hello, Mom." "Yes, she's here." "I know, but..." Mark's voice was a mix of resignation and frustration. I strained to hear Helen's words. "Mark, you need to put your foot down. Tell Sarah to slow down with her work. It's not good for Lily, or for your marriage." Mark's response was quieter, but the words stung nonetheless. "I agree, Mom. I've tried talking to her, but she won't listen." "Yes, I'll try again." He hung up, and I couldn't hold back any longer. "Was that your mother? Telling you to get me to quit my job?" Mark ran a hand through his hair, looking exasperated. "She's just worried, Sarah. She thinks you should focus more on Lily and less on work." And I can't say I disagree. I clenched my fists under the table, feeling a surge of anger. "So, now your mother is dictating how I should handle my career?" "Mark, I'm not just Lily's mother or your wife. I have my own aspirations." He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "And what about my aspirations, Sarah? Isn't it enough that I'm working hard to provide for us?" I stood up too, my heart racing. "I'm also providing, Mark. Why can't you understand that I'm capable of managing both my career and my family?" He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping him. "Because every time you manage both, it seems like our family gets the short end of the stick." With that, he stormed out of the kitchen, leaving me standing there, fuming and frustrated. The tension at home had reached a boiling point, but little did I know that work was about to throw another curveball into the mix. It was a Monday morning, crisp and clear, when the director of our company called Mark and me into his office. The air was thick with anticipation as we sat across from him. "Sarah, Mark, I'm sure you're both aware of the upcoming vacancy for the operations manager position," he began, his eyes shifting between us. Mark nodded eagerly, a gleam in his eye. "Yes, we've heard about it." The director leaned back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. "Well, I wanted to talk to you both, because you're on the shortlist for the promotion. It's a tough decision, you're both highly qualified." I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension, but before I could respond, Mark jumped in. "That's great to hear, but I think it's clear who the better fit is. I mean, with my experience." I cut him off, my voice firm. "Actually, I believe I have just as much to offer for the role. My recent projects have significantly boosted our department's performance." The director raised his hand, signaling us to calm down. "I appreciate both of your inputs. We'll make a decision in the coming weeks. Best of luck to you both." As we left the office, Mark was visibly fuming. Once we were alone in the elevator, he turned to me, his voice low and harsh. "Sarah, you should step down from this. I deserve this promotion." I looked at him, incredulous. "Why should I step down? I've worked just as hard as you, if not harder." Mark's jaw clenched. "Because I'm the man of the house. It's my responsibility to be the provider." I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. "Mark, this isn't the 1950s. I have every right to pursue this promotion." We exited the elevator, our steps echoing in the empty hallway. Mark stopped, turning to me. "This isn't just about the job, Sarah. It's about our family. You're already stretched thin. Think about Lily." I felt a surge of frustration. I am thinking about Lily. I want to show her that her mother is strong and capable. That she can achieve anything she sets her mind to. Mark scoffed. "Fine. But if you get this promotion, don't expect things to stay the same between us." The threat in his tone was clear, and it sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just a competition for a job, it was a battle for respect and equality in our relationship. That evening, the Cold War at home continued. Mark's mother called, her words laced with disappointment. "Sarah, I can't believe you're considering this. You need to let Mark have this opportunity. It's the right thing to do for your family." Her words only fueled my determination. "Helen, with all due respect, this is a decision for Mark and me to make. I won't step down just because Mark thinks he's entitled to the position." After hanging up, I looked over at Lily, who was playing with her dolls, oblivious to the storm around her. I whispered a promise to myself, no matter what, I would stand my ground. This promotion was more than just a job, it was a statement, a declaration that I, too, deserved recognition and respect. The stress of the ongoing promotion battle and the tension at home with Mark began taking a toll on me. I started feeling unusually fatigued, my mind wasn't as sharp, and I struggled to concentrate. One morning, I was in the kitchen, trying to prepare breakfast, but everything seemed like an uphill task. "Lily, can you please get your backpack? We're running late," I called out, my voice lacking its usual energy. Lily, ever so observant, looked at me with concern in her little eyes. "Mommy, are you okay? You look really tired." I forced a smile, not wanting to worry her. "I'm fine, honey. Just a bit tired, that's all." At work, things weren't much better. My performance was slipping, and it didn't go unnoticed. My boss, Mr. Thompson, called me into his office one afternoon. His expression was a mix of concern and professionalism. "Sarah, is everything all right? Your work lately has been, well, it's not up to your usual standard," Mr. Thompson inquired, his tone gentle yet firm. I sighed, feeling a wave of embarrassment and frustration. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson. I've just not been feeling well lately. I'm not sure what's wrong." He leaned back in his chair, considering my words. "I understand, but you know this is a critical time for the department, especially with the promotion on the line. Do you think you can handle your responsibilities?" I nodded, though doubt crept in. "Yes, I can. I just need a couple of days to get back on track." As I left his office, my mind was racing with worry. What if this illness cost me the promotion? What if Mark was right about me stretching myself too thin? When I got home, Mark was there, and his reaction to my state was the opposite of what I needed. "You look terrible, Sarah. Maybe this is a sign that you should step down from the promotion race." His words stung, and I snapped. "No, Mark. I'm just not feeling well. This has nothing to do with the job." He shrugged, his voice laced with a hint of satisfaction. "Well, if you can't handle the pressure, maybe it's for the best." I turned away, feeling a mix of anger and helplessness. I decided to take a few days off without pay, hoping that rest would help me recuperate. However, rest didn't seem to make things better. My condition worsened, and I found myself unable to shake off the fatigue and brain fog. I was lying on the couch one evening, Lily sitting beside me, coloring. "Mommy, don't be sad. I'll make you feel better," she said, her voice full of childlike innocence. I smiled weakly. "Thank you, sweetie. Mommy just needs to rest a bit." But as the days passed, my health didn't improve. I began to worry that something more serious was amiss. I was about to learn that my condition was no mere coincidence, and the truth behind it would shake me to my core. As my health continued to decline, I found myself spending more time at home, curled up on the sofa with a blanket, feeling a weariness I couldn't shake off. Lily, my sweet daughter, tried her best to cheer me up, her innocent attempts at playing doctor both heartwarming and heartbreaking. One evening, as I lay there, Lily came up to me with a serious look on her face. "Mommy, I'm going to make you all better," she declared, clutching her toy stethoscope. I managed a weak smile. "Oh, is Dr. Lily in the house?" "Yes, and I have just the thing for you," she said, running off to her room. She returned with a small, colorful pill in her hand. "Here, Mommy, this will make you feel better. Daddy said it's a special vitamin." I froze, the pill between her tiny fingers sending alarm bells ringing in my head. "Lily, where did you get this from?" She looked up at me, her eyes wide and innocent. "From Daddy's room. He gives me one every day to put them in your food. He said it's a secret game." My heart pounded in my chest. "Lily, sweetie, this is very important. Can you show me where you got these pills from?" She nodded, taking my hand and leading me to Mark's bedside drawer. Inside, I found a small bottle of pills, none of which I recognized. I hugged her tightly, a sense of dread washing over me. Mark's recent behavior, my inexplicable symptoms, and now this discovery. It was too much to be a coincidence. "Lily, thank you for showing me this. You're such a good girl," I said, masking the turmoil inside me. After tucking her into bed, I took the bottle of pills and locked myself in the bathroom. My hands trembled as I Googled the imprints on the pills. The search results sent a chill down my spine. They were a strong prescription medication, not vitamins. I sat on the bathroom floor, the reality sinking in. Mark had been giving me these pills, under the guise of a game with our daughter. But why? What was he trying to achieve? The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, forming a picture so sinister it was hard to comprehend. This wasn't just about the promotion or our marital issues. This was something much darker. Armed with the bottle of pills and a heart full of dread, I knew I needed concrete evidence before confronting Mark. The next morning, I made an appointment with my doctor under the guise of a routine checkup. Sitting in the doctor's office, I presented the pills. "Doctor, I found these, and I think I've been unknowingly taking them. Can you tell me what they are?" The doctor examined the pills closely, his brow furrowing. "Sarah, these are strong meds, not something to be taken lightly. How have you been feeling lately?" I recounted my symptoms, the fatigue, the confusion, the general sense of unwellness. He nodded, jotting down notes. "We'll do some blood work right away. If these pills are causing your symptoms, it'll show up in the tests." A couple of days later, the test results confirmed my worst fears. The medication was in my system, and it was causing my symptoms. I felt a mix of relief and horror, relief that I wasn't imagining things, and horror at the thought of my husband's betrayal. I looked at the doctor, a sense of dread washing over me. "Can these be bought over the counter? Without a prescription?" He shook his head, his expression grave. "Absolutely not. These are strong prescription medications. They can be quite harmful if taken without proper medical supervision." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just Mark acting alone, his mother, Helen, a pharmacist, must be involved too. It was a chilling realization. The two people I had trusted were conspiring against me, using their knowledge and access to harm me. I thanked the doctor and left his office, my mind racing. The drive home was a blur. I was in a state of shock, struggling to comprehend the depth of the betrayal. Mark and his mother had crossed a line that was unfathomable. At home, I sat in the living room, the test results and the bottle of pills on the coffee table in front of me. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, forming a picture so sinister, so unthinkable, that it shook me to my core. I needed to confront them, to face them with the truth. But first, I had to ensure Lily's safety. I called my mother, asking her to take Lily for a few days, making up an excuse about needing some time to deal with work stress. Once Lily was safely with my mother, I planned the confrontation. I needed them to admit what they had done. I needed to know why. How could they betray me like this? How could they use Lily, an innocent child, in their twisted game? The next day, I called Mark and Helen, asking to meet at Helen's house. My voice was calm, but inside, I was a maelstrom of emotions, anger, betrayal, but above all, determination. I was going to expose their deceit and protect myself and my daughter, no matter what it took. The drive to Helen's house was one of the longest of my life, each mile stretching out like an eternity. As I parked outside, my heart was pounding, my hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, the bottle of pills and the medical report in my bag. I knocked on the door, and Helen opened it, a fake smile plastered on her face. "Sarah, dear, come in. What's this about?" Mark was sitting in the living room, his expression a mix of worry and defiance. I didn't waste any time. "Mark, Helen, I know about the pills," I started, my voice firm, despite the storm of emotions inside me. Mark's face turned ashen. "What pills, Sarah?" I pulled out the bottle and slammed it on the coffee table. "These pills. The ones you've been giving me through Lily. And my test results show they're the reason for my illness." Helen's eyes widened, and her facade crumbled. "Sarah, this is a misunderstanding. Why would we do something like that?" Her voice was shaking, but her words lacked sincerity. "It's no misunderstanding, Helen. These are prescription drugs. And being a pharmacist, you would have easy access to them." Mark stood up, his hands clenched into fists. "Sarah, you're blowing this out of proportion. I was just trying to level the playing field for the promotion." I stared at him in disbelief. "By poisoning me? Using our daughter in your scheme?" Helen chimed in, her voice now laced with desperation. "Mark was just worried about his career. He didn't mean any harm." I shook my head, anger surging through me. "That's not an excuse. You both endangered my life, and you used Lily to do it. That's unforgivable." Mark's face was a picture of guilt now. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I didn't think it would go this far." Helen started to sob, her hands trembling. "Please, Sarah, we can work this out. Don't destroy our family over this." But it was too late for apologies. "This is beyond working out, Helen. I'm taking this to the police. What you did is criminal." Mark reached out, his voice filled with panic. "Sarah, wait. Think about what this will do to Lily." I pulled away, my decision firm. "I am thinking about Lily. That's why I can't let you get away with this. She deserves better." Leaving them in their stunned silence, I walked out of the house, my mind made up. I had to protect my daughter and myself from any further harm. After leaving Helen's house, my mind was made up. It was a difficult decision, but I knew it was the only way to protect myself and Lily. I went straight to the police station, my hands trembling as I held the evidence tightly. The investigation moved quickly. Mark and Helen were brought in for questioning, and the evidence against them was overwhelming. They were charged with poisoning, and the trial was set. The day of the trial was tense. I sat in the courtroom, my hands clenched in my lap as the prosecutor laid out the case against Mark and Helen. Mark's face was ashen, and Helen looked like she was on the verge of tears. When it was time for my testimony, I took the stand, my voice steady as I recounted the events. I trusted them, and they betrayed me. They used my daughter to poison me. Mark's lawyer tried to discredit me, suggesting that I was fabricating the story for personal gain. But the evidence spoke for itself. In the end, the jury found them guilty. Mark and Helen were sentenced to prison for their actions. As the judge pronounced the sentence, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that justice was served, but sorrow for what my family had become. After the trial, I focused on rebuilding my life. I was promoted to the vacant position at work, a bittersweet victory. Lily and I moved into a new home, starting fresh. One evening, as I tucked Lily into bed in our new home, she looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes. "Mommy, are you happy now?" I kissed her forehead, feeling a sense of peace. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be just fine." And we were. Despite the pain and betrayal, we found strength in each other. I showed Lily that we could overcome any obstacle, and that truth and justice would always prevail. As I turned off the light and left her room, I knew that this was just the beginning of our new journey. A journey of healing, of new opportunities, and most importantly, of hope. Our future was uncertain, but I was determined to make it bright, for both Lily and myself. Life before Liam was simple. I was Miranda Spencer, a marketing assistant, and my world was all about coffee runs and deadlines. Then I met Michael, a department head at a tech firm. He was all charisma and confidence, the kind of guy who owned every room he walked into. We hit it off, got married, and before we knew it, Liam was on his way. But childbirth wasn't kind to me. It left me a shell of my former self, struggling to heal while caring for a newborn. Michael's support, once my rock, started to crack under the pressure. I was in the living room, trying to soothe Liam, when Michael walked in, his face drawn with fatigue. "Another rough night, huh?" I tried to keep my voice light. He barely glanced at Liam before dropping his briefcase. "Yeah, thanks to him. I barely slept a wink." I bit my lip, feeling a sting at his words. "He's just a baby, Michael. He's not doing it on purpose." Michael sighed, rubbing his temples. I know. It's just, everything's a mess. The house, our schedules. I'm tired, Miranda." I wanted to say I was tired too, more than he could imagine, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just nodded, feeling the weight of his disappointment. My mom, Anne, breezed in then, her presence a welcome relief. "I'll take Liam for a bit. You two should talk." Michael's mood shifted slightly at her arrival. "Thanks, Anne. We appreciate it." Once Liam was in my mom's arms, Michael turned to me. "Miranda, we need to figure something out. I can't keep going like this." I felt a lump in my throat. "What do you want me to do, Michael? I'm trying my best here." "It's not enough." His voice rose, frustration evident. "Look at this place. And when was the last time we, I felt a flash of anger. "I'm still healing, Michael. What do you expect?" "I don't know, Miranda, but this isn't working. We need a break from this." His words hit me like a punch. A break? What does that even mean? Michael ran a hand through his hair, looking exasperated. "I don't know, okay? I just need some space to think." I stood there, stunned, as he grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" "Out. I need air." And with that, he was gone. I sank onto the couch, feeling alone and overwhelmed. My mom came over, placing a hand on my shoulder. "He's just stressed, honey. It'll get better." But as I listened to Liam's soft coos in the next room, I wasn't so sure. Michael's words echoed in my mind, a harsh reminder of how much had changed. And I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The next few days felt like walking on eggshells. Michael's mood swings were more unpredictable than ever, and I was exhausted, trying to keep everything together. Liam's health took a nosedive. He was fussy, always crying, and I felt clueless about what to do. It was another sleepless night. Liam had been crying for hours, and nothing I did seemed to help. Michael stormed into the nursery, his face red with frustration. "What's going on, Miranda? Why can't you make him stop?" he snapped. I was on the verge of tears, rocking Liam in my arms. "I'm trying, Michael. He might be sick or something." "Sick? Great, just what we need," he muttered, running his hands through his hair. "I can't deal with this right now. I've got an important meeting tomorrow." I felt a surge of anger. "Well, I'm sorry our sick child is such an inconvenience to you." Michael glared at me. "You know what, Miranda? I need a break from this chaos. I'm going on a business trip for a couple of weeks." I stared at him, incredulous. "A business trip? Now? With Liam like this?" He shrugged, his expression cold. "I don't have a choice. Work needs me." I felt my heart sink. "So, what? I'm just supposed to handle everything alone?" Michael didn't answer. He just turned and left the room, leaving me standing there, holding our crying son, feeling more alone than ever. The next day, Michael was packing his suitcase when I confronted him. "How can you just leave us like this, Michael?" He zipped up his suitcase with a sigh. "Miranda, I told you, it's work. It's not like I want to go." I couldn't hold back my frustration. "It sure doesn't seem like it. You can't wait to get away from us." He looked at me, his eyes hard. "Maybe I do need a break, Miranda. Maybe we both do." I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "I can't believe you're doing this." Michael picked up his suitcase, his face set. "I'll call you when I get there." And with that, he walked out the door, leaving me in a house that suddenly felt too big and too empty. After he left, I called his boss, hoping to understand why this trip was so urgent. I dialed the number, my hands shaking. "Hi, this is Miranda, Michael's wife. I was just wondering about the business trip he's on." The voice on the other end was confused. "Business trip? Miranda, Michael took a leave of absence. He's not on a company trip." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "A leave? Are you sure?" "Yes, he requested it 2 weeks ago. Said it was personal." I hung up, my mind racing. Michael lied. He wasn't on a business trip. He just left because he wanted to. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks, and I sat there, numb, wondering what else he was lying about. That night, as I tried to comfort Liam, I knew things between Michael and me had reached a breaking point. I just didn't know how to fix it or if it was even possible anymore. For 2 days, I was a wreck, trying to piece together the shards of what was happening. Liam's cries were the only sound breaking the deafening silence in the house. Then, out of the blue, Michael came home. He looked relaxed, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I was feeding Liam when he walked in. The sight of him ignited something fierce in me. I placed Liam in his crib and faced Michael, my voice shaking with anger. "What the hell, Michael? Where were you?" Michael, taken aback, dropped his bag. "I was on my trip, Miranda. Why?" I glared at him. "Cut the crap. I called your boss. There was no business trip." He faltered for a moment but quickly regained his composure. "Okay, you got me. I needed a break, Miranda. I couldn't stand being here anymore." His words were like a slap. "You couldn't stand being with your own family?" He scoffed. "It's not just that. It's everything, Miranda. The constant crying, the mess, you." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. "Me? What about me?" Michael's face hardened. "You're not the woman I married, Miranda. You've changed. You're always tired, always complaining." And let's not even talk about how you look. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tears blurred my vision. So, this is my fault? I just had your child, Michael. He shrugged, his voice cold. I didn't sign up for this. I wanted a wife, not a burden. I was shaking now, my whole body trembling with a mix of rage and hurt. So, what now? You're just going to run away from your responsibilities? Michael's expression shifted, a smug smile playing on his lips. Actually, I met someone. She's everything you're not. I was with her these past days. I gasped, feeling like I'd been punched. You're cheating on me? He nodded, almost proudly. Yeah, I am. And you know what? I'm happier with her. The room was spinning. I struggled to find words. You're a coward, Michael. A selfish, heartless coward. He just shrugged. Call it what you want. I'm done here. I want a divorce. I stared at him, a mixture of disbelief and disgust washing over me. Fine. Get out. I don't want to see your face again. He smirked, picking up his bag. Gladly. This was a mistake from the start. As he walked out, a sense of emptiness engulfed me. But there was also a flicker of relief. The truth was out, and as painful as it was better than living a lie. I walked over to Liam, my little beacon of hope, and held him close, knowing that no matter what, I'd do everything to protect him from the storm that just left our lives. A week had passed since Michael walked out. I was slowly finding my feet, leaning on my mom for support and trying to be strong for Liam. The divorce papers sat on the kitchen table, a stark reminder of the new reality. I had just put Liam down for a nap when I heard the front door open. It was Michael, looking disheveled, his eyes frantic. What are you doing here, Michael? I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart. He paced the room, his hands trembling. Miranda, I need to talk to you. It's important. I crossed my arms, skeptical. What could you possibly have to say to me now? He took a deep breath, his eyes not meeting mine. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I need you to forgive me. I laughed, bitter and incredulous. Forgive you? For what? For abandoning your family or for rubbing your affair in my face? Michael winced, but he continued. I know I messed up, but I need your help, Miranda. I raised an eyebrow. My help? Why would I help you? He started to pace again, his voice desperate. It's my grandmother, Miranda. She's making her will, and I might lose everything if she finds out about us. I shook my head, disgusted. So, you want me to lie for you? After everything? He stopped, looking at me directly for the first time. Yes, I'm asking you to pretend we're still together. Just for a little while. I scoffed. Why on earth would I do that, Michael? He swallowed hard. I'll pay you $30,000. I stared at him, stunned. You're bribing me? To play happy families so you can get your inheritance? He nodded, his eyes pleading. Please, Miranda. I'm begging you. I thought about Liam, about the life I wanted to give him. And what about Liam? What does he get out of this charade? Michael hesitated. I haven't thought that far. I took a deep breath, weighing my options. Fine. I'll do it. But on one condition. Michael's eyes lit up. Anything, Miranda. What is it? I leaned in, my voice firm. This isn't for you. It's for Liam. That money goes into a trust for him. And you stay away from us after this is over. He nodded eagerly. Deal. Thank you, Miranda. You won't regret this. I watched him leave, the signed divorce papers still on the table. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. I was doing this for Liam, not for the man who had shattered our lives. As I picked up the papers and folded them neatly, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. Michael thought he was using me, but in the end, I was the one in control. The day of the gathering at Michael's grandmother's house arrived. I felt like an actor about to perform in the most twisted play ever written. Michael picked me up, trying to make small talk, but I was having none of it. The grand old house loomed as we pulled up. Michael's hand found mine, a forced gesture of unity. I pulled away as soon as we were in view of the family. "Miranda, please, just for today," he hissed under his breath. I shot him a look that could freeze lava. "I'm here for Liam, not for you. Remember that." The family greeted us with smiles and hugs. Michael's mother, Diane, came over, her eyes brimming with concern. "Miranda, dear, we've missed you. How's little Liam?" I forced a smile. "He's good, Diane, thank you. Growing fast." Michael's father, Richard, clapped him on the back. "Son, good to see you. Work keeping you busy?" Michael nodded, the picture of the devoted family man. "Always, Dad, but I make time for what's important." The hypocrisy of his words made my stomach turn. We were ushered into the living room where Michael's grandmother, Mrs. Eleanor Hargrave, sat regally in her armchair. Her sharp eyes missed nothing. "Miranda, my dear," she greeted me, her voice strong despite her age. "It's so good to see you." I approached her, respectful yet distant. "Thank you for having us, Mrs. Hargrave." She nodded, then turned to Michael. "And you, Michael, how have you been?" He perched on the edge of a chair, all eagerness. "Great, Grandma. Really great." She hummed, her gaze piercing. "Is that so? And your marriage? How is that faring?" Michael reached for my hand again, squeezing it. "Better than ever, Grandma." I felt like I was going to be sick. The afternoon dragged on with idle chit-chat and family updates. I played my part, smiling when needed, laughing at the right moments, but inside, I was screaming. Finally, Mrs. Hargrave cleared her throat. "I suppose you're all wondering why I've called you here today." The room fell silent. Everyone's attention was on the matriarch of the Hargrave family. She continued, her voice firm. "It's about my will. I've made some changes, and I wanted you all to be the first to know." Michael squeezed my hand tighter, his anticipation palpable. I could only think about getting through this charade and getting out. The sooner this was over, the better. As Mrs. Hargrave began to speak about her will, a tense silence enveloped the room. I felt Michael's grip tighten on my hand, his anxiety palpable. I, on the other hand, was bracing myself for the performance of my life. Mrs. Hargrave, with her lawyer by her side, began methodically outlining her decisions. "To my daughter, Diane, I leave the summer house in Maine." The details blurred as I zoned out, my mind racing with thoughts of Liam and the future. It wasn't until Mrs. Hargrave's tone changed that I snapped back to attention. "And now, to my grandson Michael," she began, her voice firmer. The room seemed to hold its breath. Michael leaned forward, a forced smile plastered on his face. "Yes, Grandma?" Mrs. Hargrave looked him straight in the eye. "Michael, I've always hoped you'd grow into a man of integrity, like your father. But it seems I was mistaken." Michael's smile faltered. "Grandma, what do you mean?" She continued, unflinching. "I mean that a man who betrays his family, who lies and cheats, does not deserve my legacy." You could hear a pin drop. Michael's face drained of color. "Grandma, I don't understand. What are you talking about?" Mrs. Hargrave's gaze turned to me. "Miranda, my dear, would you like to explain?" I felt every eye in the room on me. Taking a deep breath, I stood up, releasing Michael's hand. "Michael has been unfaithful. He left me and Liam to be with another woman." Gasps filled the room. Michael's parents turned to him, shock written all over their faces. "Michael, is this true?" Diane's voice was barely a whisper. Michael stumbled over his words. "Mom, it's not like that. Miranda, why are you saying this?" I looked at him, my voice steady. Because it's the truth. You wanted me here to pretend everything was fine. For your inheritance. Mrs. Hargrave nodded solemnly. I had my suspicions, but now it's clear. Michael, you will receive nothing from my estate. Michael was on his feet now, desperation in his eyes. Grandma, please. I need that money. Mrs. Hargrave shook her head. Money that I fear would only fuel your selfish desires. No, Michael. You've made your bed. Now you must lie in it. Michael looked around the room, as if searching for an ally, but found none. His gaze finally settled on me, a mix of anger and disbelief. You did this, he accused. You ruined everything. I met his gaze, unflinching. No, Michael. You did that all by yourself. The room was thick with tension, the family's shock at the revelation palpable. Mrs. Hargrave's decision was final, and with it, Michael's facade crumbled. The gathering, meant to be a solemn family affair, had turned into a dramatic unveiling of truths, leaving Michael isolated and defeated. The aftermath of Mrs. Hargrave's announcement was chaotic. Michael's parents, Diane and Richard, were the first to react. Diane approached Michael, her eyes filled with disbelief and hurt. Michael, how could you do this to your family? She asked, her voice quivering with emotion. Michael, still reeling from the shock, struggled to respond. Mom, I just made a mistake. A mistake? Richard interjected, his tone harsh. You call destroying your family a mistake? I stood there, feeling like an outsider in their family drama. Mrs. Hargrave, however, remained composed. This is why I made my decision. A person's true character is revealed not in their successes, but in their failures. Michael turned to me, a mix of anger and desperation in his eyes. Miranda, tell them it's not like that. I looked at him, feeling a strange sense of detachment. What do you want me to say, Michael? That you didn't leave? That you didn't have an affair? His face contorted with frustration. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Seeing me brought down like this. I shook my head. No, Michael. I'm not. This is just the truth coming to light. Mrs. Hargrave then addressed me directly. Miranda, I want to apologize for my grandson's behavior. And I want to make things right. I was taken aback. Mrs. Hargrave, you don't owe me anything. She nodded firmly. But I do. I'm reallocating what I had set aside for Michael to Liam. I'll set up a trust for his future. I was speechless, overwhelmed by her generosity. Thank you, Mrs. Hargrave. That means a lot. Michael looked defeated, his earlier bravado gone. He turned to his grandmother, his voice barely a whisper. Grandma, I'm sorry. Mrs. Hargrave looked at him, her expression softening slightly. Michael, I hope one day you'll understand why I did this. It's not just about the money. It's about learning from your mistakes. The room slowly emptied, leaving Michael and me alone. He looked at me, his eyes searching for something, forgiveness, understanding, pity. I didn't know. Miranda, I don't know what to say. I collected my things, ready to leave. There's nothing to say, Michael. Just take care of yourself. As I walked out of that house, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was a resolution. A new beginning for Liam and me, and maybe even for Michael, in his own way. The day I finalized my divorce from Michael felt like a long-awaited exhale. It was done, the chapter of my life with him was officially closed. I was at home, organizing Liam's toys, when I heard a knock at the door. Opening it, I found Michael, his eyes red and puffy. Miranda, please, I need to talk to you, he pleaded, his voice shaky. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. What is it, Michael? He sank to his knees, a picture of desperation. I'm begging you, Miranda. Please forgive me. Take me back. I've made a terrible mistake. I looked down at him, feeling a mix of pity and resolve. Michael, it's over. We're divorced. You made your choice, and I've made mine. It's time for both of us to move on. He grabbed at my hand, his tears flowing freely. But I have nothing left. She left me, said I was a lost cause. You and Liam are all I have. I gently pulled my hand away. Michael, you can't just walk back into our lives because she left you. What about when you left us? He had no answer, just sat there on his knees, looking lost. I hope you find what you're looking for, Michael, but it won't be with me, I said firmly, my heart aching for the man he once was and for the family we could have been. Returning inside, I looked at Liam, playing contentedly. He was my world now, and I was determined to give him the best life possible, filled with love and stability. That night, after putting Liam to bed, I sat on the couch, a sense of peace settling over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was ours to travel, and I was ready for whatever came next. Michael's chapter in our lives was over, but ours was just beginning, full of hope and new possibilities.